Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Fantasy 420, where today we are going to be continuing our 2019 Major League Baseball This or That fantasy series, where we pick two players who are being picked around the same round and the same position, and give pros and cons, weigh each side and each player, and pick a verdict on which player we would take out of the two. Sometimes they're very hard decisions, and you got to make them. You got to choose one or the other. And today we're going to do that with two really good players. Today we have two players who are second rounders on fantasypros.com. They're both outfielders, and they both play for the New York Yankees, which will make their team the same. So regardless of who they picked up, lost in the offseason, they're going to be on the same team. So that'll make things a little easier than yesterday. The first name is going to be Aaron Judge, who is pre-ranked 17th against Giancarlo Stanton, who is pre-ranked number 19. So before we can get to the evidence, we'll just do a quick recap of last season for both players. Obviously, for Stanton, he had that MVP monstrous career year 2017 on the Marlins, hit 59 home runs, won the MVP, amazing season. Then the Derek Jeter ownership ended up buying the team. The Marlins ended up saying they wanted to trade Stanton and move on from his massive contract. Stanton had a no trade clause, and he blocked a trade from St. Louis to San Francisco, and then finally agreed upon going to the New York Yankees. He did land in the Yankees lineup with Judge, Gardner, Hicks, Didi, whole laden full of stars, and had a ton of hype. And despite that, has had a pretty underwhelming first season hitting in that lineup. He was healthy the whole year, played 158 games, had 102 runs, 38 home runs, 100 RBI, 5 stolen bases, and hit 266. So overall, from what we were expecting coming off of 2017, ending up in that star-studded lineup, kind of didn't do as well as we thought, whether it was the first year under the lights in New York, the nerves, whatever it was, it just wasn't what we were expecting. And then on the other side of the coin, you had Aaron Judge, the guy who was hitting right before him most of the time in the number 2 hole, as Stanton was hitting third. He had, once again, just like Stanton, sky-high expectations. He had a monstrous rookie year in 2017. He was Rookie of the Year in Major League Baseball, had 52 home runs. And then they added Stanton, providing him a layer of protection. So everybody thought, like we said, sky's the limit. And he had a decent season until he ended up breaking his wrist on July 26th. He was given a 3-week timetable, but ended up coming back on September 18th, which was, instead of 3 weeks, around 7 weeks. So more than double the timetable, which really put a damper on his end of the season, got rid of any sort of fluidity to his season that was going, but he still ended up all right. 112 games, 77 runs, 27 home runs, 67 RBI, hit 278 with 6 stolen bases. So obviously, knowing that injury derailing his year, overall, hard to argue it was an underwhelming season, but that being said, it was salvageable, especially with a DL league, if you could have put him on there and picked up somebody else, maybe Aaron Hicks, who slotted into his spot. That would have been nice, so not as hurting as Stanton, I guess. So moving on, we'll go to the evidence for each side of each player, prevalent things about what I would make my argument based on. Surprisingly, Stanton is 29 years old and Aaron Judge is 27. But the big difference really between them is their years of service. This is going to be Giancarlo's 10th season in the major leagues. Uh, he played 100 games his first year being called up, and then 100 games after that, except one 70-game season. So he's been in the league for a really long time, whereas Judge, it's going to be his third year of service, and he's only 27 years old. So he was called up when he was 24, whereas Stanton was a super early call up in 19. So what that tells me is that we have a lot more of a baseline to go off of with Stanton, and a lot more numbers that we can base a verdict off of. That 50 home run season was really an aberration. He has only hit 50 home runs that one time. Every other season, he's hit over 30 home runs 4 times, and that was a 38 home run season, 37, 37, and 34. And he had less than 30 home runs 4 times in his career. I would expect him to hit at least 30 again with the Yankees, and he did have 38 last year, but I don't really see the 50 home run upside being likely. As with Judge, he's had 2 seasons, one which was injury laden, and granted, I don't think he would have hit 50 last year, but he hit 52 the year before. So I think 50 is a lot more reasonable and likely with Judge. Also, Stanton is only a career 268 hitter, and he hit 266 last year, so that's around where he is going to hit. And like I was mentioning before, I would expect a year of comfortability and a year of a Yankees bump. But with that being said, I'm not sure how much more of average you're going to get. Maybe this is the Stanton, and that's just sort of what we're going to expect. Maybe he even levels off after turning 29 with 10 years of run under his belt. So seems like that's around his average and where he's going to hit for his career. He's had 100 in RBIs plus 3 years. He had 100 RBIs last year, so just barely hit that threshold. Once again, hitting that Yankee lineup. But out of his 9 seasons, he's had 100 plus RBIs 3 times. 6 times he's had less than 100 RBIs. So when you extrapolate all these numbers together, he comes off as a little less safe than you would seem, a little less dominant through his career than you would seem. And he also is coming off the highest strikeout total in his career. He struck out over 200 times last year, that being Stanton. So who knows? We might be seeing the beginning of the end. I wouldn't think so. I would think he has a little bit better numbers of last year, but man, kind of damning looking at all those stats over and over. So, which obviously brings me to my verdict. And not surprisingly, as I was kind of leading on with all those numbers, I'm going to buy into Aaron Judge. If you give Aaron Judge a healthy season, and that being, he's not rolling, we just extrapolate the games he missed through his injury of his wrist, give him 10 more home runs, around 20 runs, 20 RBIs with extrapolation, and you're getting Stanton-esque numbers with an already higher average. Like I said, his fluidity being a little bit down, bringing his numbers down, coming back. He's still higher average and stolen bases and missing all that time over Stanton. So if he has a non-broken wrist, he's healthy, everything's good to go, a year 3 breakout, I don't really see why I wouldn't buy into Judge as opposed to Stanton here. Judge is 1 inch taller and 40 pounds heavier. So if you're looking at a home run hitter, Judge is going to bring out more power, and he would actually fit that archetype a little bit more than Stanton. I'm just buying into all these factors and a year 3 in the major season more than a second year of comfortability for Stanton. I think that what you got last year with Stanton may be a little better, but that's what you're probably going to get. Whereas with Judge, I think he'll be much closer to his Rookie of the Year 2017 rather than 2018, and I would definitely project a huge bounce back for him, and I think he's definitely worthy of that second round spot, early second round, even late first round if you super wanted to buy into Judge. Stanton is somebody who I might be fading. I might be picking him in the early third round, which means I won't be getting him, but I really like Paul Goldschmidt this year, Freddie Freeman, Blackman, Kluber, Chris Bryant, all guys being picked behind him on Fantasy Pros, that being Stanton, and guys who I might be willing to buy in before I bought into Stanton. So I might be fading him a little bit. So I really appreciate you guys listening to my video. Really exciting 2 Yankee outfielders, and we're getting much closer to the opening day season, and I'm getting really excited, guys. So I hope you can all drop me a sub. I'll leave a link to my other playlist for baseball that I've had a lot of videos on going forward through the preseason, and I look forward to hopefully hearing from you about Judge and Stanton. If you guys have a differing opinion or the same opinion, I'd like to hear either way. So I really appreciate you guys listening, and I hope you all have a great day. Talk to you again soon.